Hello there, everybody, and welcome to BLS Show and Tell BLS024. And today I have two guests, Nacho Vazquez and Lars Brink. Welcome to the show. Most people already probably know Lars, but it wouldn't hurt to have a short introduction. So if you could go ahead, and then Nacho can take over from there.
Well, today I'm here as part of a new open source group called NG Workers, and today we're discussing our first library published to the public, but we're working on several others.
Very cool. Welcome here, welcome back. Lars has been here 3 times when we talked about NX workspace structure, and some nice things grew out of that, but later about that more in other episodes. Nacho, welcome here, first time on the show.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Awesome. Can you tell a little bit about yourself? What are you doing? And then right into Lumberjack.
Of course. Yeah. I am a software engineer. I currently working at UIT here in Montevideo, Uruguay, but I'm originally from Cuba. I have been working with Lars for a while. He helped me wrote one of the articles about NX architecture. Right now he jumped in and we both create this organization where a lot of amazing people is joining to create tools for NX and Angular.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, it's exactly the thing we'd like to talk about here on BLS. So I'm super excited. Lumberjack is a logging library. Took me a second to get the name, honestly, but luckily it's there. The best logging with a tree. So that's awesome. We will have a practical session today. So in about maybe like 10 minutes, we'll jump into the code. But I'd love to hear from you, Nacho, why you got to make this library and what it's about.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. What Lumberjack is a logging library for Angular, right? And the idea of what is needed outside of all those other Angular libraries that already exist is that I was thinking of having some kind of plugin-based architecture where I could easily extend how the Lumberjack is used in the wild. And all this began in a side project, a freelance project, where we had the need to have this kind of logging library, and we were using Nest.js for the backend, and we had Winston there, and we were using a wrapper for Nest.js and Winston, and I actually liked the idea of having these transports. That is how it's named. The drivers, Lumberjack drivers, are named. The similarity in Winston are transports, and I tried to find something similar in Angular. I find out there was none, so I just create this POC, quick POC for that job, and after I realized that it might be interesting to share it for the community, and I created the first version of Lumberjack. After it, Lars joined forces, and right now Lumberjack is a totally different monster, and he has all the responsibility for how robust he has become.
That's a great responsibility to share. Yeah, it's very interesting because I think in backend frameworks, having a logging library is kind of essential. It's always there, and you just want to make use of it. Whereas in the front end, I did some attempts in the past, but nothing really serious. But it's mainly a wraparound console log that prints some fancy colors. But Lumberjack attempts to bring the actual things that happen in your front end to the back end, so you can inspect them there, you can share them there, store them there, see trends, etc. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, it's actually a bit more than that, because we are releasing the creativity of whatever we want to use Lumberjack. We add 2 drivers that are the way that you write or send or share your logs to your servers, to cloud driver store to the console, right? And we provide two simple ones. We provide a console, which is a classic, right? You want to at least see your logs in the console. And we provide a simple HTTP driver for dispatching to a given POS endpoint, right? But that's just for giving the sense of what can be done. But the true power of Lumberjack is based on its flexibility to be open to create new drivers and easily integrated with the library. So we will see now when in the examples, but basically the idea is that you write a log, you send a log to Lumberjack, and Lumberjack will take care to deliver that log to each of the registered drivers, right? So the possibility are endless in that sense.
Yeah. Very cool. I just saw, I think this morning you shared on Twitter a new logger that goes to Firestore. What more drivers do we have?
So
go ahead, Lars.
Yeah, another community member is working on a driver for Azure Application Insights. And there's a few in the backlog that you wanted to work on at some point, Nacho. But yeah, like Nacho said, we wanted to provide the foundation and then make it easy for the community to add log drivers. We have like, so in Angular, we have the ng-new. In Lumberjack, we have a Git template repo on GitHub called Lumberjack custom driver. And with that, you get a whole repo with CI and an overall structure in place and tests and everything. If you want to create like a custom driver that you want to share with other people, if you want just a custom driver for your project, it's a bit more simple. You have to implement an interface and provide it in the right way for Lumberjack to register it.
Very cool, very cool. It definitely looks interesting. And we should take a look any second now. I'm obviously still trying to get my application to run. I just changed something. You might know this pattern, but we should be there in a second. So the application that we're going to look at today is some sort of store, and I'm about to share my screen. I just need to make sure that my sample later runs. So what we're going to look at today is a store like Fiverr, where you can buy services from people. People offer services for money, and we have a transaction system in there. So we have a payment system, and I thought this was typically something that would be interesting to log anything that happens there, and probably starting with the failures. That's probably the most interesting thing we want to look at. But yeah, for me, this is an interesting library. I just need to quickly figure out why this doesn't run. So if you bear with me 1 second, I'll make sure that this works. And let me quickly see, and I can share the screen already. I need to generate.
Is your camera broken today?
My camera?
Mm-hmm.
It should work. Don't you see my updates on my screen? Okay.
I don't see your picture.
Okay. Let me quickly share the screen, because if that's the case, we might even switch gears and have one of you do the demo, because this is the similar thing I had this Sunday. Do you see the
screen? Yeah.
The screen? Yes, but you don't see me moving.
I don't see your picture at all.
Okay, we might just take the safe shot and start doing this in a Stack Blitz if that works for you. Because I had issues with my screen freezing and my camera freezing as well. And as I have startup issues right now getting this thing to work, it might be a good call to look at a Stack Blitz. So not sure if one of you is able to share a Stack Blitz and we can go over it from there, just to get it set up.
We could take the tour of heroes from Angular and open that in Stack Blitz.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it, Nacho?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Awesome.
Let me
awesome.
Find it.
because this is kind of yeah. I know what happens. You should never upgrade software on the last moment without doing some proper some proper experimentation if it actually works.
I will in a second. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so let me quickly see, and you should be able to share screen.
Okay.
I'm gonna remove mine, and meanwhile, let's check in the chat. We have a lot of people in the chat. We have here with our one of the regulars, Serkan. Serkan, welcome here. We have Agustin Garcia from Uruguay. Hello, Agustin. Welcome to see you. Good to have you here. Abel de la Fuente, also a resident on the stream here each and every stream. It's awesome. Thanks for your support. There's Lars. Well, he's just chatting with the folks. He's being the people wishing everybody welcome here. And then we have Michael Karen. That's why I still use XP. I'm not really sure in relation to what that says, but oh my, yeah.
I think it was about don't upgrade, something like that.
Right. So cool. Yeah, any second we should have the screen coming up. There it is, and I'll share it here. And okay, so this is a stack blitz, and if you can bump up the font a little bit, I think if you zoom it in, maybe 4 or 5 ticks, then it should be readable.
Is that okay?
I think if you have one more, then it's perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Cool. Okay, cool. And as long as you don't use the sidebar, you can even get rid of it. There's a little button in the left corner on the bottom for stack blitz. That is like the Zen mode.
Awesome. Yeah, I will need it just a second, I guess, for installing dependencies, right?
Yeah. So this is the standard Tour of Heroes app, and I think I can share this link in the chat. So this is whatever we take in, and this is Tour of Heroes. So we start out by installing @ngworker/lumberjack @next. So this is the pre-release of version 2 that's about to come out. I'm not going to ask you dates because that's always hard.
Well, we feel like it's in a good place now. We have been very thorough with testing and making everything right. But yeah, we still want to have a release candidate. For community feedback, especially from the log drivers, if there's anything we need to change or application developers. Right. So it's just we feel like it's in the place it needs to be, and we don't have to make more breaking changes. But we want to just, in case we need some last minute change, because the goal here is to have a very stable version 2 that we don't have to introduce any more breaking changes from this point and going forward for a long time.
Cool. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, better be safe than sorry with these kind of things. Okay, awesome. So we have app module in front of us. The dependency is installed. What's next?
Exactly. So at this point, we have everything we need from a dependency perspective. So the next thing we need to do is register the Lumberjack main module and all the providers in our app module, right? And for that, we are going to get here our Lumberjack module for root. Okay.
It should auto-input, I think, auto-import on mouse hoover.
Okay.
So there's no quick fix. Now this means it needs to be done.
Don't worry. Let's do it manually. It is okay. So what we are going to get from this import is basically, of course, all the core functionality base, but especially the Lumberjack service is what that is maybe the heart Lumberjack, right? And is the one who is going to be in charge of handling and discovering all the drivers and knowing what to do when someone logs. He has a single API method, which is log, so pretty simple, right? But the idea is not to use directly the Lumberjack service, and we will get to that in a moment. So, okay, we already have registered Lumberjack model root, but that doesn't do anything by itself, because as we explain later, this is mainly focused about our drivers and the plugin. So we firstly need some driver to make sure that we have somewhere to log. So we are going to use at start of Lumberjack console driver, which is the simple one, right? Okay. And let's see if we can find it now. No, don't worry. Okay, let's do it that manually. And maybe it will be interesting to add this manually, because Lumberjack console module actually live in a different entry points.
Right. So it's tree shakeable.
It's tree shakeable, and you are going to import only what you use.
Very good. And any ideas about the size that you're looking at when you add this to your project?
I can go just a second to Bundlephobia, and we can take a look there.
Curious about this. But with a lot of things, I guess if you're going to build something yourself, then it will cost space as well. So we don't really have anything to compare it with. At least I don't have anything to compare it with.
So here we are.
Yeah, here you go. 4.1.
This is version 1.10. So let's get to the release candidate, which is what you want to use, right?
Yeah.
And you have 7K minify and 2.2 G7 minify.
Awesome.
So
it's pretty small footprint, I'd say. Definitely acceptable.
I will say that, yeah.
Yep.
That's probably before tree shaking as well.
Right. This might be all the exported endpoints. Yeah.
I think it is tree shaking. I don't see here the drivers, so probably yeah. But we can take care of it later. Okay, so
cool.
We have our Lumberjack console driver module, and that's basically what we have to do. Awesome. So, okay, now we are end with the APP module if we don't want to use any other driver, right? This could be enough configuration. But of course, here we can have our HTTP driver module, in this case, Lumberjack, right? And the newly created Lumberjack Firestore
right
driver module. So this is all the dependencies that we will need to add here, but that's just depending on our needs. For now, let's hang on with the console driver, and we can try the HTTP driver later. So we are done here. So the next thing that we want to use is to start logging, just that is. And let's create maybe an quickie initial log for app initialization. So let's go to our app component. Let's have here constructor. And okay, so this is the point where we have different flavors for start logging. And I'm going to be against myself here, and I'm going to use just the inline logs, just for demonstration, the simple form. And then we can start discussing best practices, right? But yeah, so what we will need at least is our Lumberjack service, right? Let's just call this Lumberjack. Lumberjack. And here we will need to fix this. And we still doesn't have computation, right? Well, doesn't matter.
Looks like there's going to be a lot of manual importing today, but
yeah, no problem with that.
In the meanwhile, I'm trying to fix my camera, but I'm gonna give up. You have to do it without me. But if you're curious what I look like, there's like hours of stream on YouTube where you can check me out. So yeah, awesome. So right here in the app component, and I think I assume that doing logging generally wouldn't happen in the component right away, but more like in a service, or is this?
Well, it depends. You will obviously maybe had a lot of logging. Maybe if you're using NGRX, you want those logs to happen in the effects. Maybe you have some service based architecture you will have in your service. But I see totally possible to have some kind of logs burned or started or dispatched from components, right? Because you may want to, it depends. You may want to log as simple things as bootstrap of a section of your app and maybe add some analytics over it then. You may want to have a global error handle and use Lumberjack there to store this log about some errors in the app, or you may want to have a try catch in your component to do something and log there. So yeah, it depends on the usage, but I will say that yeah, probably one of the places where it will be most common to have Lumberjack is in the effects. If you're using NGRX, it is a good match there. Okay, so this is it. We have Lumberjack and we have our log method, and here we are going to need to add some basic properties that our log needs to have, right? So we will need a message, word. We will need a context, which will be a scope, which is very similar to how you define your scopes, or what of the meaning of your scopes in NGRX maybe is like the origin where this was emitted. So here we can say it was just APP component. Let's see what else do we have. I don't have auto completion here. Okay, so we have the Lars, you maybe help me with this a bit for create add.
Yeah, we need a number, a millisecond since the Unix epoch. So it's date_time.now. If you want to do it like this.
Yeah,
or date_now.
We have a custom-based time service that we provide and we help with testing and replacing time constraints, and we actually use that in some of the other way we will explain later. But for now, we can just the create now. We also need.
Well, we don't even need the scope. That's optional.
This option.
And we need the level though. That's required. The log level. Okay, seems like we lost Nacho.
I'm here. Okay, sorry, I don't know. I have a glitch in connection here. Okay, sure. So what else will we do here? Okay, let's do one thing. Let's go to or actually README, and that will give you some help of how we start, right? And we'll do the full reboot, the full walkthrough to the usage of the app.
And this documentation we see here, that's for the latest, basically the next version that we're looking at.
Exactly. Of course, we need the level. So this is an important part of Lumberjack. We have, of course, we define some levels of logging. We have a lot of control over where a driver should log based on the level of that log. So here we will have Lumberjack log. We have to import this one.
It's called Lumberjack level.
Oh, right.
We have been changing the names a lot around since version 1 and to version 2. So there's a lot of names exported, so it can get hard to keep track of it all. But some of the other APIs for logging will make it a bit easier.
Cool. So now we're checking it out here, and once we open it, we see a info, first line here in the output, an info with the timestamp app component, hello world, with a undefined. Awesome. Okay, so this is it, and then the critical viewer will be like, well, I can do this with just a console log. That's kind of besides the point, but that's probably the first thing people see when this is the demo. Of course, this is not everything. But yeah, so the basic thing you do is you initialize it in your app module. You define at least one logging driver, in this case, the console log. Then in the component where you want to use it, or if you want to use it in a server, that can be done as well. There you inject your Lumberjack service, you call .log, and you're passing an object. So far, so good. Seems pretty straightforward to get started. So yeah.
There's one more property we can add, right, Nacho?
Yeah, exactly. So this undefined here is something actually we have to look at it, because that's what we are saying here is, okay, what we are going to log after the formatted structure of the log, which is something that can be configured, how this format will be. There is also an additional property, which is the payload. And the payload is something, an extra property that it is generic here in the Lumberjack service and in almost every other classes that we use across Lumberjack, that allow us to provide additional information to our log. And we could easily demonstrate how that payload works, because we can create here just a class, right?
Interface.
Which will be, interface will be okay. Interface, let's say it's app payload, which stands the Lumberjack log payload, if I know.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get this here. And let's say we want to deliver something else. Let's say the NG version that we are using here, right? And that's something that we want to persist along with all logs, but it's not possible with the basic functionality. So we just add this here, and we will use generics to say to tell the Lumberjack service that we are going to be using this kind of payload. And now we just add it here and create a new one, which will be NG version. And let's say we will probably want to use something different here, but for the aspect. Okay, so cool. Now we have our same formatting meshes, but where we have undefined, now we have our log driver or payload. And this may be especially useful when we are using the HTTP driver or something else that sends data to an external log store. And you can add whatever information you want to deliver there. So yeah, this will be the basic usage of Lumberjack.
Very cool. So next to the required thing, and I think Lars mentioned scope's not even required. So you set the level, you set the message, you can add the payload, the create add. I would kind of expect that this was something that the log method can do as well. Is there a reason you expose this and you have this be as a property?
Well, this is obviously something that we want Taro logs to have, right?
Yeah.
But when you're creating a log in line, as we are doing right here, you could obviously have some kind of inner system that handles that for you, right, into Lumberjack. But we want to give the user also some kind of flexibility. So
right.
The best way to handle this will be using Lumberjack logger. And the Lumberjack logger will indeed inject the Lumberjack time service and provide the create add for you. You won't have to add this property. So that's awesome. That's why we don't recommend logging this way. We recommend using a logger. So if you think it's okay, we can start with proposing best practice here and what Lumberjack logger are.
Just one more thing. We also want to be able to differentiate between the log creation time and when it was actually logged. And that is the use case that the loggers will make clear that this is the case, that we can pre-create the different logs, very similar to, or somewhat similar to an NGRX action, that it's an object that we can create ahead of time, and we want to be able, we can define the properties ahead of time, but the timestamp will be added when the log is created, so when the event happened. But that could be different from when it was actually handed over to Lumberjack and the log drivers.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. And it's good to know that this is something, when you use the logger, that this is out of sight, basically, if I understand correct. Okay, awesome. So this is the inline one. This is the non-best practice. So now we're going to move on to what we should actually do.
Okay, actually, we provide several ways of creating logs, right? Which is the center of all the logging. We have the loggers. We have a flavor logger, which is a scope logger, which allows you to just define once the scope and then repeat it everywhere. We have log factory builder. We have log builders. So there is a lot of flavor here that we want to get up, but essentially you don't need to use that. We just want to give all these possibilities so everyone could choose what fits better for them. But the main or the most recommended way to use Lumberjack will be using logger. So what would you especially initially do was create a logger. Let's say for this instance that we are using APP logger, right?
Right.
And this logger will just need to extend or Lumberjack logger. Correct me here, Lars. Is that
is the way to do it? There's two base classes. There's the Lumberjack logger, and there's the scoped Lumberjack logger, where you can share the same scope between multiple logs. But let's start with the basic one. And I think we need to add injectable as well to make it to make Angular happy. Hi, B-Man. I can see you for the first time.
I did some trickery behind the back. I did a classic browser switch. Firefox helps me out today. Props for Firefox. So awesome. We're gonna be building. So this is basically a service, right? The most commonly known as a service. Some class that has an add injectable decorator on it in Angular terminology. This is probably so we can inject the Lumberjack service here. And then this is the logger that we would share throughout our app. And one of the things, a general best practice that I see here is you're wrapping around a third-party library, which is often a good idea, so that you hide away any changes of implementation that they might have, or you polish up the exposed API so it's a bit more fluent or natural for your app. So I think in general, that's a great best practice for, well, not every library. You're probably not going to wrap around NGRX, but maybe for something like a logger, that's definitely anything I would look at to customize. So this is going to be a root level injectable.
Yeah,
so this one,
exactly. So what I just copy paste for we can speed up a bit the process.
Yeah.
There's a typo in the provided in.
Oh.
Yeah.
And all these that I copy, you can find it in all best practice. Sorry, Lars?
You don't need the constructor and the dependencies. You can delete those lines.
Okay.
We need that inside of Lumberjack because that's something we should discuss later. We're supporting many versions of Angular with version 2 of Lumberjack. And because of that, we have to be backwards compatible with Angular 9.
All right.
That definitely will be something cool to talk about.
Yeah, we were actually, the reason we had that constructor is because we were actually maintaining compatibility with version 8. But unfortunately, the library format changed between version 8 and 9 because of Ivy. So we would have to publish a separate bundle, and we haven't done that yet. We have a proof of concept, but it's only something we'll do if there's interest in the community to also have a view engine version of Lumberjack.
Probably when Google will be one of the clients, they are kind of asking for it. Okay, so cool. So, but this works, that's an interesting point. It works with version 9, 10, 11. And I think you have a quite impressive GitHub action workflow matrix where you test these things all out. I think it spits out like, I don't know, maybe 12 channels where it runs tests, and very interesting.
Cool. So getting back to our logger. So basically, this what we are proposing with this way of creating logs is a way to make standard logs created in a single place with less boilerplates, and also trying to keep some standard way of creating this log. So we don't want everyone to create, or we don't have to want logs spread all across our application, built in different ways, with different scope, with different formats. So this is a way, or loggers is a way of getting all that standard and with less boilerplate, using a more familiar syntax, using injectable service, which in this case is our app logger. So what we want to do here is we define a static scope that is going to be basically what will define the origin of our logs. And this will be a mark maybe in when we want to, how many loggers we want to build. And this code is going to be a good metric to determine that. So we have that scope. We can see the scope logger later that will help us with this. And we just use our inner methods that we extend from Lumberjack logger to create our logs, right? And we have one for each level of possible logging.
Yeah. Okay. So you can just extend the ones here, and in this place you would create a collection of like basically standardized log messages that are tailored for your app and the things that you commonly log. So let's say you want to do authentication, then you have one for maybe login failure, register failure, and maybe other ones for login success and register success that just print to the console.
Exactly. So one thing to notice here, different that we had before, is that we don't have to use a level in the password level, because the method will do that for us. The critical logger will do that for us. We just have to pass the message, and optionally the scope that we are going to use here, and just build, because this is a builder pattern here. And this will be our log that we want to use. And if we will have to have some payload, we will use with payload, and that will do it. So let's replace what we had before with this and see how it gets to actually works in practice. Okay.
Yeah, so now we get rid of the bad practice, and we can just say private logger of type app logger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a bad practice. In some cases, you might want to have like a more programmatic API, a more dynamic way, and we need that internally in the framework or the library for creating the loggers, for example. So in some cases, it might be valid to use the Lumberjack service directly, but in most cases, in your application, you should create these logger services.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay. And so one of the things that I just saw flashing by here, if you inject this custom app logger now in the place where you want to use it, you do this.app logger, and it will only show the two methods that you defined here. So this also, I think, really helps people pick the right one. And most likely in your app, you have some sort of naming scheme, like you have, maybe you prefix them all with some common thing. And then this is your quickest way. So this is already reduced like from 4 lines back to 1 on how to use it.
Exactly. And it will make the places where you use it much more clean. So that's a bonus too. So this is the way we will want to see the users out there. But as Lars said, we are not constraining anyone, and we provide, besides the inline login, as we've seen before, we provide any other ways that I think it is not that important to see right now, because it's just other flavors that people can investigate later and figure out if they are a good fit for them. Right, so we have for Lumberjack ready. What else can we do? Yeah.
And we see in the console that it prints out. So we have forest app here, hello forest. Now, let's say I want to use this hello forest and I absolutely want to pass in some payload. So let's say sometimes I do have a payload, sometimes no. Can I use this exact syntax? Does it take a parameter?
Yeah. Okay. So what you are asking is, can I? Okay, I get your point. Let's go over it. So first of all, this Lumberjack login is right now is not supporting payload because it is in the non-generic way, which is actually using a default generic parameter. Mm-hmm. So if we want to use the payload here, we will have first to say that we want to say TypeScript that we want to use that payload, right? So, okay, we have defined all about payload here. Was that the name we use? Yeah, true. I didn't expose this. So I don't want to expose it here because I will cause a circular dependency. So maybe we want to move this over here, or for you will usually just have it in a different file, right? But for now, sure. Let's say that we are going to have it here just for simplicity. We will need to bring, maybe he knows where it is. No, not yet.
No, he's not aware. But yeah, this is basically exactly the same pattern we just had inside of the function. or inside the component, sorry, and then move it here. So if we want to do payload, we need to specify it, which makes total sense. So before we prepare what the payload can be.
True. So as you see, we are already telling to Lumberjack that we want to use a payload, but we are not passing one, so it's optional. You don't always need to pass a payload. If you will want to payload, we provide this with payload. We create one just as we did before ng version 11.1.0, right?
Yeah.
This is not the one we are. Let's repeat this over here because the one we are logging is this one down here.
Yeah.
And we
awesome.
have.
And yeah, now it prints it out.
Mm-hmm.
And from the component, can I pass in something there? Or is this just the payload's always hidden away from the user in this pattern?
Well, not necessarily. At the end, this is just functions. So you can come up with any pattern here that you may want. So let's say that you want Hello Forest to be, let's say, function here. We receive a payload, which is APP payload, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And this, instead of doing this, we will just use that payload. And that can be the same for everything else. We may want just to have the scope defined and then use payloads everywhere.
Awesome.
We will
now
need
to go
to
here.
pass here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And pass our payload. So version 11.1.0.
And I think
probably
it's a
I
method that
have.
returns a method.
Yeah, exactly. Probably I need to do this at the end. Yeah, and that will be.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Beautiful.
Yeah,
because
I'm
this is.
kind of surprised this worked because we wanted it to be able to do that, but we didn't really test it yet.
Very cool. Live on
One
prime
of the
time
goals
here.
for this builder pattern was having parameterized log messages and payloads and scopes and every property basically, except for if I don't know if you noticed, but the created at is not here.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't touch on that, but that's something like one of my questions with the previous pattern. You have to add this in. This seems to me something that's perfectly fine to automate for a lot of cases. And so, yeah, that's done here. You hide it out of sight, and the create info logger method takes care of that, putting that all together. I think this specifically with the payload, I can see this being very useful, where you basically prepare your whole log message, and then the only thing you inject there is anything that seems, well, everything you want to store. Maybe something that are not nominal, things that you want to have in the backend. So awesome. And yeah, this is great work. Is there anything we want to look at here, or is this the time we can look at some of the loggers and how that all goes together?
Well, Alex is please asking us to not use Lambda and just function method. Okay, so we will fix that, Alex. This is just a demo, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, Alex does have generally good and critical comments in the stream. So I definitely recommend everybody watch this stuff. He has a critical eye for building these things and clean APIs.
Remove.
So yeah, but this is like, I think from here, yeah, exactly. And this is probably a more idiomatic way to do this. And yeah. This is great. I think one of the interesting things from here is basically TypeScript, and you can do it however you please, right? As long as you reuse the this.createInfo logger or create critical logger, then you should be good to go, and you can use it however you like.
Okay, was one more thing to do here, maybe to end this part of the demo, will be to use our Lumberjack scope logger, right? Which will be something useful for people that want to always use a scope. Like most of the time you're using scope, you will use it all the time. So we will use our Lumberjack scope module.
Scoped Lumberjack logger.
Scope Lumberjack logo.
Yeah.
We have a hard time with names.
Yeah, seems that that's difficult, right?
It's
Turns
difficult,
out
yeah.
it's difficult to name things. Okay, so instead of having that as a private static, you now just have a scope property, and you don't have to add the scope all around, because scope Lumberjack logger will pick it up. And then as long as Alex is here, let's quickly make line 14 private and read only, because, you know. No? Lars?
I don't know. Well, the types will complain, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, we can try.
Anyways, Alex actually helped us out with getting these generics in place, which allowed us to do this builder pattern, which we think is an upgrade from the previous version where it was just functions, but it didn't support all these different properties and optional properties and so on. So thank you, Alex, for helping with the TypeScript pains.
Yep, and making our code better one tip at a time. One of the things that did remind me directly, I've been working a lot with component stores, you probably all know, lately. And if you can quickly switch back to the app logger, the pattern we use here to create a function on your class saying, like line 16, forest on fire equals this.create critical logger is very similar to what you do when you have a use effect. So where you say like load items effect equals this dot effect, and then you pass it in. So it's kind of interesting. I think I never built a class or an API myself this way. So it's definitely interesting to see you using the same pattern. And then also interesting to see how you can do this on a very similar way in line 20, where you actually want to add an extra parameter. So yep. That's awesome. So cool. Scope Lumberjack logger. I think up until now, this is my favorite. I think little repetition. I would probably, instead of line 14, I would probably just say applogger.name. So just give me the name of whatever class this runs in. I care a lot about copy pastability of my code. So I just like to pass in stuff.
The name will be scrambled when you build it for production.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. So. But great. Okay, so this looks super clean, honestly, and I can definitely see the benefits of having this inside my app. Is there anything else you'd like to show off with the syntax? Can we look at the drivers, or what is the next thing you wanna look at?
Well, I think that from a Lumberjack perspective, this is most of it, and all the rest of the power comes when you're implementing your own drivers or using some existing driver, right?
Right.
Do you have something to add, Lars?
No, maybe we should. Well, I guess we're missing like adding the HTTP driver as well, because that's one of the powers of Lumberjack. You can have multiple drivers active at the same time, and you still use the same logging API. Yeah,
one of the things that Nacho touched on briefly that we basically didn't consider or didn't mention, I think, in this live, is the capability of having different log levels being sent out to different targets. And I think this is specifically an interesting thing. When I do logging, and let's say I build mobile apps as well, if I add something like a rollbar, it's super nice and it really helps me build good apps, but I really have to be selective, because at some point I just add too much stuff to my logs and it doesn't really help me. And this is where it gets messy. So having a selective way to send certain stuff to certain targets is definitely an interesting capability, I'd say. So for this, what we need to do is inject the Lumberjack HTTP driver module. Obviously, the HTTP client module needs to be loaded as well.
Actually, the HTTP client module won't be needed to be imported for the final version of Lumberjack. We need to import it here now because we miss it in some refactoring. We miss it from the HTTP driver module, but when Lumberjack 2 is ready, you won't need to import this one. It will be imported for you.
Right. And I think in this case, you already had it on line 26.
Oh,
so we can,
yeah.
Stack Blitz Tour of Heroes comes with it.
So maybe you could, well, first of all, let's see if it works. Like, is it sending a request?
I think some error here and trying to figure out what's going on.
Sometimes it helps to just hit save and refresh real quick. And but I'm not sure, you're not signed in, so I don't want to lose your project. What did I do? What did I do? Oh no, it's there. Okay, and then let's open the small little console in the preview so we can see any error message there. Yep.
Well, do we have can we open the networks tab in the developer tools?
Sure. Probably, yeah, probably that's something that's going on. Okay.
And refresh the app, yeah.
So this is interesting. One of the things that draws my attention here is that with the driver, you can specify options as well. It looks like it's not sending anything out.
Yes, something that I don't see is failing here. I don't know if Stack Bliss.
It might have something to do with the in-memory web API module that they're using here. I'm not sure if that's related.
That might be right. Yeah.
So
try
this
try another URL than API in the store URL.
Okay, so maybe let's send some here to Google.
Yeah, now it's stopped. It stopped complaining already. So, like a paste bin or something.
URL?
Sorry. What? Sorry, I couldn't get that part.
Can we pass a full URL? I guess so.
I think we could have like a request bin, maybe even. On requestbin.com, you can add a little bucket, but I'm not sure if that makes sense to do right now.
No. Well, anyways, the HTTP driver has a predefined request layout that is described in the README and in the source code. Of course, there's an interface, and it will pass all the properties of the log and the formatted log that you see in the console. So you will have the timestamp and the scope and the payload and everything like that.
Very cool. Yeah. So this is one thing. I quickly shared Nacho in the private chat, this request bin, exactly. And we should be able to send anything in here and it will appear on the screen that I currently have. And the screen to look at it is actually right here. So you could open it as well. This might be the solution. So the second link I just pasted in is the viewer, but we still have this error. It's probably something.
Yeah, something related to establish. I'm not sure, right? I may have one demo project that we can switch to. It will break a bit with all we had here, but
I think one thing we might want to give a shot in this Stack Blitz is line 39. Just get rid of the whole HTTP in-memory web API because I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you've tested this before with this exact project.
We haven't tested with StatDays. Okay, I think it's live now.
Yeah. Oh no, that's the heroes.
Yeah, that's the actual heroes listing component.
Yeah, it's not from Lumberjack.
So the heroes is now trying to make an API call to Stack Blitz, but that doesn't host. That's not hosted there. So /API/heroes won't work. But I do. I know. I was about to say I get requests in, but that's from people loading this URL in the browser. So okay, but
Okay. Don't worry about this. We
I
promise
actually
you it works.
I see the logs now in that request bin.
Oh,
I
you're
think the
seeing
only-
it up now?
I'm only seeing the times we accessed it in the browser.
I
So
see the two logs. Two logs actually.
the post ones.
Yeah.
Ah, there you go. Awesome. Yeah, it's there. It's there. Awesome. So cool. This is the
Oh,
backend
cool.
then, and so it was probably related to having this in-memory interceptor, which intercepts all the requests. I can imagine that this it's not really taken into account. But yeah, this is basically your white label backend, whatever it takes, whatever JSON you send to it, and then here you can see. And then if you can zoom it in a little bit, Nacho, we can just see that this is exactly the log that we have here. So the formatted log is the thing you present, and then the origin is whatever we defined inside our HTTP logger driver, and then the log itself, which is exactly this. Now, I can imagine you're using this or some version related to this in your own apps. What structure do you store this in? Is this do you have some recommendation of a table structure where you store this in, or is it up to the developer on how to do this in their app?
Oh, I will say this up to the developer, right? We try to send as much information as we could, so the developer could do anything that he wants with this. Yeah, he might just store the formatted log, or maybe it wants just what the message and the payload. I don't know. It is not. It is not hard to imagine that there could be different ways of storing this. Maybe you could want to just get this and use the internal log of the server. There are many ways of using this, right? So, but the main idea is that we want to make sure that you have an origin app, because you may have some kind of microservice architecture or multiple front-end architecture, and you have one log store microservice or something like that. Just take this imaginary scenario, and you will want to know which app produced this log, right? So that's the origin is important here. And that's the rest of the log is, yes, this is all that the Lumberjack log can provide. Use it and store it as you please. And then from there is just up to the developer imagination, right? Actually, there is a lot of usage of the HTTP driver, as simple as it is, but we could build a lot of more complex one. We could have the initial version of the HTTP driver have the concept of a wagon, in a way that we will wait for a specific number of logs to be sent to Lumberjack before sending an HTTP request, and avoid having loading the server, right? We take that out and we try to make it simple, because this was an example. And as we say, we are eagering the developers to create their own that fits better its necessities. But there are a lot of things that could be done even having with HTTP clients. And that's probably something that we want to build in the future. But it will be better if developers themselves in the community create this. But yeah, there is a lot of way of doing it. And in this case, we are sending a single log. But as I say, we could send a bunch of logs and process that differently. We could connect this with, I don't know, a hub service like Azure Hub Service, and handle this as events and add some analytics there. There is a lot of ways of us working with this and use it for a lot of things.
Yeah, what I see myself using this, most of my apps are apps that require some sort of login. So it's often like backend applications, to put it in a global sense. I don't build a whole lot of websites. And one of the things I would definitely like to have there, I can imagine, is which user triggered this event, right? So you can always relate it back to the user. Or let's say you're working on a project like StackBlitz, where your main scope, or your tenant, probably user, but then your main scope is a project. You're always doing stuff from outside of a project. So this would be something I would add there. And then it's up to me to figure out like, oh, you know what? I can do this in the payload, or I can do this one level out there and just send it along with the log message. Basically take whatever Lumberjack gives me as the log and just provide my own context. So that's definitely an interesting approach, and it seems super flexible on how this is working. Awesome. Is there anything here you'd like to show? If not, I'm going to fire another question. But if there's anything here we want to touch on, Lars, maybe?
Yeah, you were asking about the levels.
Yes.
So right now we're not really passing any options to the Lumberjack module and the console driver module, but it does actually accept some optional options. But right now it's running on defaults.
Right. So let's see if we add an object here. Right, this takes an array of levels, and then we have this Lumberjack level, enum, I imagine. And
so the HTTP driver and the console driver, they are the default configuration for them. I think is actually, how is it? It's in the README. Do you remember? I think it's.
I do remember. It is verbose, which is log to accept any log level for development, and it is error warning, critical and trace, I think, for production builds. That's the way to do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, something like that. So it's based on whether you're running in development mode or production mode. That's the default.
That makes a lot of sense.
You can override that with the options here. So we want everything output to the console driver in development. I'm not sure about HTTP driver, what the default is for that. Are you saying that's the same?
It's the same for when you don't specify. It will be the same for all drivers. Then you can override for individual drivers. In this case, we are going to add here, I don't know, error maybe for HTTP.
Yeah, and let's say then imaginary, I have a Sentry driver that logs out to Sentry. I could say every critical stuff needs to go to Sentry. The rest of the stuff I only use for tracing anyway, so I'm fine that my backend gets this. But if there's a critical error, I want to get what you used to call a pager message, probably something on your cell phone these days. But yeah, just get notified right away. This is pretty awesome, I must say. It's a great job. I really like the project you created.
Thank you, Viman. We put a lot of love here for sure. It's been a few months of development, trying to make it most easy and elegant for the developers that will use it. Right. And we kind of have a lot of more ideas in the backlog for other libraries, and we have put a lot of effort in this one, trying to make it good before making much more effort in the others. So ideally, we will want to continue maintaining Lumberjack for sure, but now we will be able to develop all these other ideas that we had, and we can talk about that in later on or in other shows.
Awesome. So yeah, no, go ahead.
Let's do something interesting here to make it see this actually working the difference. So we are going to configure the console driver for info level logs and the HTTP for error. And we will have to go to our app logger. And let's say the forest on fire. I would say it's an error. And this is an info. Okay, so now we are only seeing, okay, one more stuff is the APP component.
We need to actually trigger the forest on fire. And that one doesn't take a payload.
Remove one R.
Oh yeah, that it has been all across the repo. Lars going after me, removing the R in the forest.
Forest. This is the Spanish tongue that's coming out there.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about the forest comp when he writes it.
Very good. So this is actually interesting because I'm still looking at the logs here, and I saw this error, the forest on fire, just pop up in my request bin. You should be able to see it in the fourth tab you have open. That one. So the last one that got in at 3:11 is actually, so that it's the first one in the list.
In the top.
Yeah, it's on the top. They reverse the order.
Oh, okay.
Here, Santosh is here, and Santosh confirms something we all know. And Santosh probably as well. Live coding is hard. Yep, we've all been there. We had other plans for this show as well that I would do the live coding, but I got away with it. So awesome. So we see here that now this error, it only gets logged, and then the other ones that were there were all the info messages. So we basically now separated the path, and every important stuff is going to the request bin, and any less important stuff is just going to be logged right here. Awesome.
Yeah.
I think in general, I have one more question. I have all the time. I've got weekends. We can sit along for hours. So if we keep on going, that's fine. I would love to see if you could show me how to implement a logger. If this is something that we can look at, because that would probably give me an idea of, okay, what would I need to change in my app, or what would I need to add to have my own custom logger?
Yeah. Well, I think we should definitely open the template repo, because it will ask you some questions and set up the whole repo, and then we can look at there's only a few classes needed to write a driver, but it'll show the correct and recommended way to do it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think it would be great to show also the template repo and play a bit with this, right? So first we need to do is go to NG Worker. Okay, let's go to Lumberjack and move on from there. Okay, we have.
But basically, you implement one interface called the Lumberjack log driver, and you provide that class as a multi-provider token.
Right.
That's everything you need.
And that means that I can do that in a custom library. So let's say NX and NX structure. I'll probably create some util library somewhere, maybe a util logger, and that would expose a module that provides, using multi, this own logger driver.
So this is a template Git repository. So you click generate, and it kind of adds a copy or similar to Fort, right?
Yeah.
And inside of here, Nacho has prepared an interactive init command. Maybe in the future it could be like an npx create lumberjack driver or something like that. For now, it's a template repo, and you run the init script. It asks you a couple of questions and sets everything up.
Very cool. So this actually is looks like it's a NX workspace by itself. Is that correct?
It's similar to NX, but it's actually Angular CLI.
Okay.
It uses the structure that's usually associated with the NX workspace, but it's actually only using Angular CLI.
Okay, interesting. Can you bump up? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. So we now created a template. It's called live demo. So this is going to be our new logger driver. And there we are. Awesome.
Okay, so the first thing we are going to check out here is README rights, and the README is prepared to be basically or initially used for give us some instructions on how to come out, but then it will be Terraform to be ready for just be the library really. So
Right.
what we need to do
Zoom
is
in a bit,
this.
Nacho?
Okay.
Can you zoom in, Nacho?
Oh yeah.
That's
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So
Did you run install first? Yarn install?
It will do it behind scenes. I don't need to do that.
Okay.
But I really like this level of polish, because next to just having an interface, which is one way to do it, you also really provide with a tool that allows you to do the best practice, basically. So making sure that a log driver is built in a certain form. I think that's definitely interesting.
Yeah. So Santosh recently joined the team, and he's working on schematics. So first one will be the ng-add schematic that will add the Lumberjack module for root and the console driver for root.
Nice.
Maybe we'll create some more schematics for log drivers, for example, or for logger services. That could be nice as well.
Yeah.
Something we're looking at.
Possibly, right. So that would possibly create your app logger for you, or it would create like a log driver that only exists in your project. Because I think for your organization, whatever that might be, this makes sense to have in a separate library, reusable, version controlled, etc. But for a lot of apps that I can imagine, it's more than enough to just have this live in your app, so it's tweakable and people can actually understand the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah.
Cool. So here you say init, and now it asks for the organization. This is probably for the scope, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this will be actually the organization for npm. Let's say like that, because this is sought for publishable driver. So we have ngWarrior as default. Then we have live demo driver. We don't worry. We will give you some help here. Is you run that name.
Right.
You get to use between yarn and npm. We are not supporting pnpm for now because we are having some issues with DCI, but in the future we probably will go with pnpm too. Let's choose yarn for now. And now all the terraforming will start to come up. Essentially what we're doing here is we are renaming all the files, so they use your driver name. We are renaming the content of the files. We are setting up CI, and we are also setting up a lot of nice tools for open source, like all contributors and that kind of stuff. We are giving you an opinionated way of how to develop this driver.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's a level of polish a lot of people are looking for. I know that I like these kind of things. And maybe some interesting aside when we wait for installing packages, which basically our job, right? Waiting for installing packages and builds to complete. We might do something useful. I think you're both working probably as a result of this on some reusable things for NX projects or Angular projects. That's under the NX worker flag, or is this also the NG worker flag? Maybe Lars, you can enlighten a bit about that.
Yeah. So NG worker initially had only Lumberjack, and then we actually added a GitHub action, which is under the ng worker name as well on GitHub. And that's the one we're using for our CI to be able to test Lumberjack end-to-end with different versions of Angular in the CI workflow. So those were the first two, and then we added this template repo for drivers. But now, this past month, we have been working on, we started a mono repo called just ngWorker, where we will be adding different utilities and packages for Angular applications. we're working on a testing library called Spectacular, and there will be something for globalization, and there will actually be some extensions for CDK and material as well. And we also have the NX worker. That's the same team, different GitHub organization, different NPM scope, but the same team, and just utilities for like generators for NX workspaces in general, not only Angular, but also some Angular specific ones.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely interesting look at. There's, as we already realized while we were chatting about this, there's some overlap to what I do in NXPM stack. For instance, I generate basically empty libraries, which is something that you aim to provide. So yeah, that will definitely come in handy. I really like the idea of doing the all contributors, adding that to the project. It's something that I need to do. Yeah, in general, it seems like a great level of polish. Maybe while this is installing, we can already take a little peek at how these files look like. If the renaming
I have one more shout out. Serkan Sipahi joined the team recently as well, so now there's 4 of us.
Very cool.
So that's a nice little group, and we've known each other for a couple of years through the community, and now we really want to contribute some awesome packages back to the community.
Very cool. Yeah, Serkan is definitely well known in the Angular community as well. So it's Nacho, Lars, Serkan, and Santosh that are the core team of ng worker / nx worker. Awesome. So let's take a quick look. I would love to see the driver itself that got generated. So we got this live demo driver. Where can I start hacking after I generated this?
Oh, actually, it is finishing now. It ended up installing and fixing linked issues. So now it's adding everything to a fresh commit to have all that wrap up. But we can start looking what it is already generated for us. So we have a very similar project structure as we have in Lumberjack. And I have to mention, because I forget early, that this structure is part in ng-init lib, which was the original template that I used for build on Lumberjack. So we prefer to give them thanks for that. And yeah, so right now what we have here is we have a README, which is ready for being polluted with all the docs for this actual Lumberjack driver. We added, okay, that's done over here. We can close here. We add some minors to do here for something that cannot be automated. And we add some similar compatibility and installation guide as we have in Lumberjack. So you have all that out of the box, and you just need to fill in with the specificities what is particular to your driver. We have a conduct, a contributed section, all contributors configure. We have Husky with pre-commit hooks. And I think we have
workflow and issue templates.
Our issue templates, the pull request template, or CI workflow, which is heavily inspired in Lumberjack. So this will be nice because you will have, as in Lumberjack, compatibility checks across different Angular versions, as we can see over here.
Yeah.
So we already having up to 11.1 compatibility checks here. This is, of course, configurable. If you, for some reason, don't have compatibility with some of those, you can just delete that. And it can happen when you're building a driver and you're having external dependencies.
Yeah, say you were doing a Firebase driver. So a specific version of Firebase is usually only works with specific versions of Angular. So you wouldn't be able to support all those Angular versions with a single version of your driver. So,
yeah.
But Lumberjack supports all of these versions from 9.0 and forward. So you just need to say we support Lumberjack version 2 and we support Angular Fire 2 version whatever, which then fits into a specific version of Angular.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this level of polish. This is really well done, guys. This is awesome.
Yeah,
and
I think we should
can't
maybe
wait for
the
schematics by Santosh.
Maybe we should wait with the CI until some other time. That's a whole discussion in its own. But let's find that driver you were looking for.
Yeah, so this is what gets created. So this is where I start hacking away my own driver. So I want to do this request bin like by default. So I don't want to have set my own request bin driver. I just would like to have this, let's say, imaginary. Where would I go to do this?
Okay, yeah, you will have then here two essential parts. You have all the configurations, which includes your driver modules, your config interfaces, and everything essentially that we need to set up for making Lumberjack works. We may need lesser things that we had here, but when you have a complex driver, you will. It is good to have all that we included here. So that's why we do it this way. So we can go file after file and figure out what we have to complete over there. So the first thing is for internal config, which is actually some type of configuration that we will only use internally. With internally, I mean that we don't necessarily need all this for the public API when you are configuring. Particularly, this was based for the driver identifier, which we are not going to talk much about it right now because it's still a functionality what we want to include in Lumberjack 2, but it's just it does not do anything by itself. It will be the support for future features. So let's take that out for now, but it's part of why we did this way. But basically what you just need to do here is, hey, what I need to receive from my public API. So needed option, for example, it will be the origin, like in the other HTTP driver, right?
Yeah.
And maybe we don't want retry here. We want a simplified version. We will just want to know the origin and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have all the tests set up for all this stuff. We won't go there because there is a lot, but you are covered there. And it should be really simple to adapt this test. Most of the time, you won't even need to touch it.
I think this really helps combined with setting up your GitHub actions, having tests that run by default. And if you push it up, it's default. I think you're very much more likely to keep up to date and make sure they at least run and maybe even take the extra step and actually test the things. Yeah.
Okay, then this live demo driver will be your public API config, the one you pass in the for root or for feature or with options method. So we're just doing some kind of some tricks over here to hide the identifier that I mentioned earlier. But you can ignore this for now. This will be set up for you, and it's basically all you need for this file. So then the driver options is also some TypeScript utils here, and is made for ignore the Lumberjack default options. Let's say when you are configuring, we have a Lumberjack driver config, and we oblige you to use the levels, to pass the levels here, and the identifier also. So, but sometimes you just want to use the default, which we also provide. So in those cases, we don't want to oblige you to use to pass the levels in the public API, and that's what this option is for. It's just a simple way to, hey, just give me what I need, which in this case will be the origin, right?
Yeah, it should become clear with the looking at
And
the
it
module.
looks like. Sorry, Lars, go ahead.
It should become clear when we're looking at this module, because we have the option to add 2 methods, for root and with options. And
Right.
with the for root, you pass a full configuration, including the levels filter that we saw before.
Yep.
But with the options method, it will inherit the levels from the global config, the Lumberjack module for root config. So if you don't want to have different levels for this driver, you should use the with options in your application.
Right. And is this
We can
something
see
you only ever
an easy
register?
example here when we're in the start list. If we go to the app module, here I'm using for root in the HTTP driver module, right? I could swap this with options and will be exactly the same. But if I'm using for root, I cannot ignore the levels. That will be an error there. We need to pass the levels. But with options, we help us there and just pass the necessary and use the defaults. And that's what we're doing here.
You were asking about registering or something, Beeman?
Yeah, so what I see here is the for root pattern, which is pretty common. It often comes with a for child where you register it in your other modules. How does that work with Lumberjack? Do I need to provide it anywhere, or is it once provided for root and you can use it wherever you go?
It was just once per application, especially in the root app module, the core module, wherever you want to define your root level providers. And it's the same with options.
Yeah.
We need it.
So it's not like NGRX where you provide a for root for your global configuration, and then any place where you use NGRX global storage, you do a for feature config.
Maybe in the future we will have
Right.
that as well. It's in the backlog.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
And what you will want to do with that is probably change some of the behavior of your driver when you're building, where you're in a child module in your application. But for now, this is what you get. You get one per application hierarchical injector. So that's enough for now, we guess.
Maybe you wanted a different log URL for another feature of the app. Maybe you wanted the debug logs for a particular feature of the app. That's something we might look into supporting out of the box later.
Yeah, definitely interesting. So, okay, this is all basically the ceremony to set it all up, to put it in that way. We have types, and I think things like live demo driver options, the last one you showed, which is basically an omit, and the other omit, these are things you might very well not touch. They are just there to do the proper type correction, help you, type hinting probably. And then the meat of it, where do I actually do the work? Where do we go out?
So it is pretty common that you don't touch anything here. It says configuration, and everything else you will leave it as it is. So this single file is where all the magic happens, right? I will take this out. So basically what we have is a class, a service with the decorator, and what you need to do is implement the Lumberjack log driver, and that's basically it. The Lumberjack driver, of course, will force you to implement the interface, which contain all these methods. That's what you need to do. And that's basically it. You need to inject the configuration so you can use it in case you need it. Not required at all, but probably you want to use that. That's it. Then you can start doing whatever you like. You can do this an HTTP, so probably we want an HTTP client. We need to import. We're here in the constructor.
Yeah, so I hope at this point it's clear, like what do you need to do from here, right?
Yeah,
Where
this
you
is
add your logic.
yeah, and I think if I look at my own logger libraries, this was basically where I ended up with. Have one central place that I can just call and do log, and then whatever I log in there, and then I would, for instance, check if I was in dev mode, where I do want to log all the debug stuff, but then if I run a prod build, I don't care about the debug stuff. So I think everybody that gave a go at writing their own logging library probably started out with something like this, define a few levels, and but having this be part of a bigger ecosystem and having some patterns and some structure around this would be definitely helpful.
It's common /
Common, right?
Yeah.
Common / HTTP.
Yeah, common first.
Common first. I don't know why. Not even locally, it's trying to play ID HTTP at the end, right?
Yeah, and another community member showed me his similar log driver, or log library, and he ended up doing a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
Except he added some other stuff, but it's interesting. Like you say, you end up with similar pattern eventually.
Yeah, and then with that in mind, it's often good to look at an existing tool to prevent having to find out what the edge cases are, because I'm sure that there's edge cases being covered next to being super strictly typed, which I think, like for me, I know this is not a super high priority. If I just build a one-off logger, I know how to use it. I'm fine with having some methods like the public API being typed, but I wouldn't, for instance, bother having support for typed payloads, which is definitely interesting if you work on a team and you want to promote some sort of structure here. So I'm definitely interested in looking at, so you might know that I work a lot with GraphQL backends and I have a whole auto-generated GraphQL API. So what I generally end up with for something like this, I would most likely have some mutation that would just accept logs. So for me, it's going to be an interesting experiment to look at how I would basically wrap my own logger driver around my auto-generated SDK, or maybe another way to think about it, maybe generate a log driver that I just auto-generate a log driver and I can just import it and do it this way. So this is super helpful. It seems like very lightweight, because I think if I want to do it just manually without all the fancy stuff of publishing it, this file is the one I'm looking at. And this is what I want to do. And I'm not going to say I'll provide any, because I won't, or I might. But I could just write my own log demo driver, inject whatever I need to inject here, which in my case is like my GraphQL SDK, and then just go ahead and implement. And I can definitely see this being useful. And yeah, super nice. Very, very cool. And very nice work. Is there anything else you like to show off or you like to talk about or mention with regards to Lumberjack?
We're looking for feedback. Like this version 2 took longer than we planned for, but that was because of feedback from the community, especially from people interested in creating these log drivers for NPM so that other people can use it as well. And the first one is already published for Firestore. So that's an opinionated structure for Firestore.
Very cool. Yeah, so that's definitely nice that there's some prior art out there of people that actually do this. I think this one is really taking it to the next level, having this level of polish on how to onboard something. There's really not a lot of reasons to not build your own driver and do the right thing. The Lumberjack team is actually pretty active on the Angular Discord, discord.gg/Angular. There's a @Lumberjack or a #Lumberjack channel. I know one of our members, Dora, is a user of the library, so I know that she's been working on integrating it. So that must be cool to have some real life feedback from somebody that's actually running her day job doing this. It must be a nice compliment of sorts. So yeah, congrats, guys. I think it's amazing what you achieved. If there's nothing else to share, then I think we can wrap it up for today with regards to Lumberjack. Nacho, is there anything else you like to plug or mention, or are you writing a book that we can buy? Is there anything? Feel free to plug it right here.
Oh, awesome. Oh, thank you, Biman. Thank you for having us. This has been great. I hope that the live demo wasn't that bad, but I think the main idea get captured here, and you're ready to build your own drivers and just Lumberjack as easy as a breeze. And yeah, we will be continue adding functionality to Lumberjack, but as we have mentioned across all the lives, we are also working in NX Worker and other NG Workers libraries. So stay tuned, and if you want to contribute, we are always open to contributing. We have more in our hands that we can handle, so every help is useful. So that will be for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much. Lars, do you have anything to add, anything to plug or mention?
Thank you for having us. And yeah, as you mentioned, there's a Lumberjack channel in Angular Discord. It's also linked in the README file of Lumberjack now. So just find us there if you have some feedback or need support. We should be able to help you out. I am actually writing a book, but that's for another time. It's not done yet.
You can plug it here, but it's not done yet. We might have you on BLS if we have something to talk about there. It's definitely going to be exciting. Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for building this and sharing it with the community. I'm definitely intrigued, and I'm going to be looking at it probably today. And yeah, that was it. Everybody that was in the chat participating, thank you so much for being here. This was BLS, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.